Welcome to ADMA Unplugged. I am so delighted today to be joined by Patrick Collister, who is the Head of Design for Google Creative Labs and joining us all the way from the UK. So thank you very much for your early morning start this morning.
Hi there, Jodie.
So I'm going to... Nice to see you. So I'm going to get straight into it. We've only got about 20 minutes or so to get the most information out of you as we can. So I'm going to get straight into the questions and really kind of I want to get into your role and what you're doing over there as Head of Design for Google Creative Labs. So you've been known, obviously you're very well known in the UK as an ad man, you've been a creative director for 25 years and now you've taken this new role over at Google Creative Labs heading up the design team. So what is that job and what is it that you're doing now?
I'm the creative director of a part of Google called the Zoo, and I'm the creative director of it here in Nice, which is Northern and Central Europe. Google has got a zoo down under, by the way, run by the legendary John Merrifield. And what we're tasked with doing really is trying to help major clients make the most of the World Wide Web. It's that simple and that complicated. I guess when you look at the way clients spend money, their audiences have deserted TV in large numbers, of spending more time online, but budget hasn't followed them. So our job is simply to inform clients, to let them know what's happening in the digital space, then to illustrate and illuminate what's happening, so to give them kind of examples, and then lastly, to inspire them, and that's through having ideas about their brands and what they might be doing. I seem to have lost you, Jodie.
Are we back now?
Well, I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Okay, good. Okay. So it's all right, you don't need to be able to see me. As long as you can hear me, that's fine.
Okay.
So my question... So my question to you was on the kind of inspiration front, because it is really important that we continue to inspire clients. So what are some of the different ways that different from a general kind of creative agency, what are some of the ways that Google Labs uses to inspire clients to be doing different types of work?
I try to make sure that before we go into any meeting with any client, I'm able to extract from the data a piece of information either about their brand or about their customers they didn't know. And I think that's what Google can do through some of the analytics tools we have here. We're able to really throw the window open on some extraordinary landscapes for our clients. So in the team here, I've got two very senior, really top planners. And that's the interesting thing. I mean, as a creative director here, I work really closely with the planners. And by the way, the people I've been recruiting have been planners from a direct marketing background. I don't mean any disrespect to above-the-line planners, but quite often I found in my time as a creative director, an above-the-line planner would tell me what they think. A direct marketing planner would tell me what he or she knew, and I'm kind of really interested in that, and so are our clients.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you've been quoted as saying, and this is certainly not my words, that you said it's really interesting that Google looks to a grey-haired man like me, you know, rather than looking to some of the younger generation coming through. Is that because some of that skill set that we're now looking to is the traditional skill set, and that we need to go back to that?
That's a really great observation. I think one of the reasons Google came after me is because I have spent 25 years building brands, and YouTube is the second most used search engine in the world. It's also an absolutely brilliant brand building platform. I think within Google there are a lot of extremely clever people who are able to put together really stunning media plans. But actually, what are you going to put inside those boxes that are down on the plan? And that's where I came in. taking the zoo, I suppose, away from being a studio, closer to being a creative consultancy.
So what do you do? So we hear a lot these days, and particularly us as ADMA, obviously we're very focused on the data-driven part of the industry, but we're really seeing the connection now being made between data and creativity. So have you observed and do you see within Google that data is used to drive creativity, and what does that look like?
For 10 years, Jodie, I was in and out of direct marketing agencies where people talked about data providing insights which would drive creativity. And I've got to tell you, I saw precious little evidence of it. And in fact, a couple of years ago, when I was still a consultant, I worked on a beer brief, and the customer insight there was on a Friday evening, young guys often like to go out with their mates to let off steam. I got to tell you, that isn't an insight. It's not even an observation. It's just pitiful. But then I turned up at Google, and actually I began to see the data throwing up real insights almost immediately. The very first task I set myself when I got here was to take a TV commercial I wrote 25 years ago and to answer the same brief, but using Google platforms and social media today. And essentially, it was an ad about selling milk. And in the ad I wrote 25 years ago, we see two little boys coming in from playing football. And I'm not going to take you through what we did, but I was halfway through the creative solution. And it's about boys playing football here in the UK and using social media to get kids actually playing football, rather than just a 40-second commercial about it. Anyway, I was halfway through this, and one of my planners came to me and she said, I've been looking at the data. So I rolled my eyes, because I'd spent 20 years doing that. And she said, no, she said, here's a really interesting thing. So I've been looking at the numbers, and in the UK, kids are still interested in football, but less interested than they used to be. And so they're more interested now in individual sports like cycling and swimming. Now that's an insight because it's blindingly obvious when you start thinking about it, because of course we've got Bradley Wiggins and Chris Froome and cyclists winning gold medals all over the place, and then the Beijing effect with Rebecca Adlington. So I could see that. But then she said, get this, the trending sport in the UK is dance. Now I was a real gobsmacker. And then she kind of provided the evidence to back it up. So here was data providing an insight that meant that the creative approach had to change dramatically. And I've got to tell you, in the last year, all the major pieces of business I've worked on have been driven by data insights.
So how has that changed the structure of the team? Because for two reasons. One is that generally, your data experts and your creatives are very different types of people, and trying to get them to collaborate and work together is tricky. And also, secondly, generally the creative idea leads, it's not the data leading. So how has that changed the structure of your team and the people that are within your team?
Well, if we go back to my example of the milk here, I mean, the data did lead the creative because the data revealed that the trending sport in the UK is dance. So what you want to be is on the crest of a wave or even ahead of it. So it radically changed the creative, because now what we needed to be doing was to talk about dance, get people dancing and so forth. But it's a very good question about data and data analysts, because you're right, data analysts are a different breed. But what I've got here, I've got two absolutely brilliant planners, and over in Asia Pac we've got Joe Fry working for the zoo team there. So these are people who are a brilliant bridge, because as planners, what they are able to do is to go to the data analysts and start asking them to search in particular areas. Otherwise you just get kind of blankets of data which are meaningless. So for me, at the heart of the advertising offering, not just of Google, but actually of all the best agencies in town, planning is now the essential skill, and I'm afraid, you know, they are, I hope, they should be, anyway, the rock stars of our business.
So you're using planners as the bridge to kind of to connect the two different languages?
Absolutely right. So the planners here are spending a lot of time with the data analysts, telling the data analysts exactly what they should be looking for. So rather than just give us sheet after sheet after sheet of meaningless data, we now begin to ask kind of, oh no, questions. Oh, bloody, are you there?
Yes.
Ah, my computer just decided to log out for a second. Panic. Really.
We all lived that with you, your panic moment. Sorry, what were you saying?
I'm just saying I love my planners. And actually, my whole background as a creative guy was with planners as essential. When I started at BMP, that was the agency that invented planning in the UK. And so I've always admired planners. And by the way, every single creative award I ever won was on the back of some brilliant work done by someone else. So to all those planners who I never said thank you to all those years ago, thank you guys.
Thank you, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to move on to kind of slightly different subject matter, because you have been known to make some controversial statements out there, and I just want to test what you mean by those. So you've talked a lot about the kind of golden age of creativity and your concerns about where this is going today. And you've also written, again controversially, that a lot of ads are rubbish these days, and you're blaming, to some extent, the media agencies as they're kind of openly challenging creative agencies for advertising dollars. So do you still feel this way, and what do you mean by that? Why are you thinking the media agencies are to blame for this?
Well, I don't really. What I do see happening is that there's convergence. You know, media agencies are now looking to add value to their clients' businesses by developing strategies and creative ideas. Meanwhile, by the way, we see agencies now going back to offering a media function as well. And the reason for that is that it's simply to do with kind of money, really, and the price of media. So what I was trying to say to media agencies is, look, if you're going to do it, you know, do it in an unabashed, unashamed way. Go full service. But don't be hesitant about it. Go for it. So, for example, I mean, here in the UK, I know a couple of the media agencies are going that way. I mean, Naked, for example, was a great example of media strategists, media planners moving across into creative. And, of course, in Australia, Naked have done some fantastic work. So I'm not an enemy of media agencies. My argument was slightly more complex than the way it came out. And I take full responsibility for not writing as clearly as I should have done.
Or maybe it was editing. So where do you see this model evolving to? So where does creativity now sit? Can it sit within different types of agencies? Should it still be with creative agencies? Is it in-house? Where now does this whole creative process sit?
Well, this isn't a very easy answer to give, or at least it's not something that a lot of people will like to hear, but where it sits is with collaboration. You know, channel planning is now unbelievably complicated. You know, the media landscape is just so fragmented that if you're a marketer, it's incredibly difficult to know how to pick your way through it. And there are a lot of different kinds of agencies all offering solutions. I think genuinely the answer is through collaborative teams working together. What that means is if you're a creative agency, historically the idea has been your intellectual property and you've guarded it absolutely fiercely. It's the one thing that you offer, the idea. And now, actually, as a creative agency, if you do come up with the idea, you have to share it almost immediately with other people who have the skills to be able to implement that idea in ways you could never imagine. So, I mean, ideas now need to be experiential. They need to work in social media. They need to be able to work as live events. I mean, you know, a great idea needs to be a horse blanket at the Melbourne Cup as well as a TV commercial or actually a YouTube strategy. And making all of that work is very difficult. So one of the things that we do at the zoo is work in partnerships, both with the clients and with their agencies. And that will be both the media agency and the creative agency. And if the personal chemistry is right, and you get all of these people around a table together, then actually you can really have some fantastic solutions to major business problems.
Is there one way that you would say that actually promotes that collaboration? Because it is quite difficult to bring all these different agencies to the table. I hear it all the time, that you are trying to bring all these agencies together and try to get collaboration between them. It's really, really difficult. So have you seen, and are there kind of techniques that you use within Google to actually align everybody behind the bigger objective, which is obviously delivering on the client's needs?
Well, I think one of the reasons I got hired here in Europe was because I'm a creative director of some vintage, but it means that I know a lot of other creative directors in town. And I am able to say, guys, we're on your side. We're not the enemy. In fact, what we are is a resource for creative agencies if they want to work alongside us. And there have been examples in the year and a bit I've been here in which we've been able to develop, if you like, strategies and core propositions, which we've then handed over to the creative agencies so that they can then execute the ideas with the brio that they're capable of. So collaboration is all about learning to trust each other and the fact that we're not trying to steal each other's lunch.
Yeah. I think sometimes easier said than done. I'm going to move on to a different area now, and that is your book. So you've written a book called 7 Ideas, and it's come from tools that you've used over the last 10 years to help creative people have ideas. So give us a brief snapshot of what are these 7 ideas?
Okay, I mean, one of the reasons I wrote this book, which by the way hasn't been published yet, so
preview.
Actually, one of the reasons I wrote it is because a lot of creative people rely on patterns that they've created for having ideas, and so left brain, right brain. Very right-brain people, I sometimes feel, need lists and logic in order to be able to help them. So the 7 Ideas is a very left-brain way of getting creative people to think outside their normal patterns. Quite often, creative people will have the same idea again and again and again. And so the 7 Ideas was a way of jolting people. It's also a way of making sure that you can start having ideas instantly when you get a brief. And the first one is, I call the presenter, which is who or what can present your argument. And you have to have an argument in advertising. It doesn't matter, even if there are no words, no headline in the press ad, or no words in the TV commercial, there's still an argument behind it, which is buy, bloggo, because. And so I always used to make creative people start there because they had to start forming an argument in no more than 50 words. Buy, bloggo, because. And who or what would be best placed to deliver that argument. The second of the advertising ideas is problem solution. And again, this takes us all the way back to strategy in the brief. As a creative director, I wouldn't sign a brief off unless I'd had the problem identified in the creative brief, because otherwise we were just messing around in the dark. As Einstein said, a problem defined is a problem solved. So quite often advertising executions will describe the problem and then the product or the brand is the solution to it. Then the third thing advertising can do absolutely brilliantly is demonstrate the advantage of the product or the service. The advantage is demonstrate the advantages of it to you as a consumer, or demonstrate the advantages of over the competition. So that's the third one, the good old-fashioned demo. And by the way, online is a fantastic place for brands to be able to demo what they do and how they do it. The fourth advertising route is the analogy. So what's it like? What is using this brand like? And again, this is the whole business of storytelling and metaphors. So can you take the brand into that kind of territory? The fifth route is, I call it inversion. And inversion is just reversal. So what happens if you reverse your proposition, or if you do reverse the expected? Who do you not want to use your product or your brand? Why don't you want them to use it? What happens if you flip the sentence so that the subject in your proposition, so the subject becomes the object and the object the subject? And by the way, reversals are the essential element of humor as well. The next advertising idea is the slice of life, and this is the most complicated one of them all because it's based on observation of people and what the brand means in their real lives, genuinely. And whenever that gets pulled off properly and brilliantly, they are long-term successful campaigns. And then lastly, it's called borrowed interest. And already, I mean, borrowed interest is the Football World Cup, and already I'd say 3 out of every 5 commercials in the ad breaks here in the UK are about bloody football. Hey ho.
So when's this book going to be published?
When I pull a finger out. An educational publishing group here in the UK were very interested in it. And they liked the outline, they liked the first 4 chapters. It's up to me to just polish it. I just wanted, you know, I'm a creative guy, I wanted it finished. I wanted it to look really good. I also wanted, at the end of the book, I wanted a couple of chapters that would be case histories of how the 7 ideas were put to work. So last year in Cannes, I did a seminar using the 7 ideas to try and help Greenpeace come up with an idea about fishing quotas. And so it's down on me. It was a great session in Cannes, by the way, and a really good way of describing how the 7 ideas came up with completely different sorts of idea to solve that particular problem.
That's great. So we've got very much time left, only a couple of minutes. I know that you're a big fan of John Webster, obviously, who obviously died a few years ago, but several of his campaigns are still running. But who are the best creatives that you see that are working today, and who now are the creatives that are inspiring you?
Who are the creatives inspiring? Well, I mean, there are a handful of people who I think are exceptional. There's a guy called Jeffrey Hansen, who's the creative director of Duval Guillaume in Antwerp. I mean, Antwerp doesn't sound as if it ought to be a creative mecca, but this guy is something special. So all of those wonderful YouTube videos, you know, TNT, a small town in Belgium, and a Fabel fan, and a whole load of stuff, that's his work. I mean, he was a direct marketing copywriter. He's done some absolutely fabulous bits of direct mail, and he's not one of these guys who feels remotely embarrassed by being a direct specialist, because actually he's got brilliant storytelling skills as well. There's a guy here in the UK called Paul Silburn, who I think is a bloody genius. He's the guy who created the very first Axe Links advertising, but he's so much broader and cleverer than that. But, you know, elsewhere, I really have enormous admiration. You mentioned earlier a guy, David Bell. You know, David Bell is also a bit like me. He's a bit of a survivor in advertising, but also he's a real enthusiast. He's watched how the nature of communications has changed, and his agency has been moving with it. So they've never been stuck in a niche. They've been doing some really interesting stuff in Australia. There's an agency called Lavender. I really absolutely loved what they did for Cafe St. James. People like Warren Brown, I think, are inspiring to young creative people. You know, was and remains one of the awkward squad, but he still managed to build an incredibly successful business and make a bloody good life for himself while helping some clients into double-digit growth. And I think people like that who can build cultures, build companies, build agencies, and be inspiring to younger people They're the guys I really tip my hat to.
So what's the one campaign, if you had to choose it, the one campaign that's out there that you think, I wish I'd done that, I wish it was me?
Well, there's a campaign which will almost certainly win many, many awards at Cannes in a month's time. And it comes from a little agency in Amsterdam called LEMS, and it's called Sweetie. And if you haven't seen this, Google it and go and have a look. But essentially, what the agency did was to create an avatar of a 10-year-old Malaysian girl who goes online. And essentially what she did was she tracked and caught the details of paedophiles going online, grooming small children. And the reason I like it is because it's where creativity and tech meet. And that, I think, is the future of our industry, understanding technology and the platforms we've got and using those in a way that can really benefit people. And I do see advertising moving now, as we advise our clients, towards not so much corporate social responsibility, but actually brands have a real duty to be good to their consumers, to their customers. And for me, LEMS is an example of what the industry can offer people at large. I find that it's an example of advertising that makes you feel proud to be in this industry.
Absolutely. So my very last question for you, before we run out of time. You spent a year now at Google Creative Labs in a pretty important position. So what's the one takeaway that you've gone into that job with one perception and you've come out with something else? So one part of that job that's really kind of changed your mind about how you approach marketing and advertising.
Well, it's got to be data. I mean, I had no idea that data could be so revealing, and it is. And I have to say that the increasing, what's the word I'm looking for? That creativity and data are getting closer and closer together. And I really think that when creative people are supplied with data in a meaningful way, they will genuinely be inspired by it, because it means that the work they do is going to change dramatically, and it has to. I mean, there's good news and bad news, you know, about the digital revolution. As I often say to guys out there, you know, the really good news is that for your campaigns to be successful, the creative work has to be fantastic. The really bad news is your creative work has to be fantastic, because if it's less than that, people are just simply going to ignore it.
So we are out of time. I'd like to say a huge thank you to you for joining us all the way from the UK and sharing your thoughts and insights with us over here in Australia. And as I asked you earlier, I assume we'll be seeing you in Cannes in about a month's time.
Yeah, definitely. I'm giving a workshop. Again, it's called the 7 E's of engagement. So it's about branded content. So again, it's left brain thinking for right brain creative people. It's a kind of how-to session, how to create branded content in a hurry.
I'll be there. Sounds good. So thank you again for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much, Patrick Collister.
Thanks, Jodie. Toodle pip. Bye.
See you soon. Bye-bye.